The invitations arrived like tiny golden promises, hand-delivered to every relative in the family. I watched from the sidelines as my phone buzzed with photos of shimmering envelopes, embossed with Lily's name. My cousin, my childhood companion, the bride-to-be. The group chat overflowed with excitement: dresses, travel plans, flowers. But my name was nowhere. I waited. 1 day. 2 days. I even asked the mailman if perhaps an envelope had been misplaced. Deep down, though, I knew the truth long before it left my mother's lips. "You're not invited, Nora." Her tone was clipped, almost rehearsed, as though she had practiced this rejection in front of a mirror. I forced a laugh, though my throat felt dry. "Not invited." To my own cousin's wedding. Her eyes narrowed. "It's better this way, you'd only overshadow her. Lily deserves a perfect day, free of complications. And you, darling, are nothing if not a complication." The words sliced sharper than any knife. My own mother, aligning herself with the very people who wanted me invisible. She didn't pause, didn't soften. She folded the laundry with deliberate calm, as though banishing her daughter from a family celebration was as casual as pairing socks. That night, I lay in bed scrolling through Instagram, each photo another dagger. My relatives posed at the rehearsal dinner, glasses raised, laughter frozen in perfect frames. Every detail of the wedding to come was paraded before me, while my presence was treated like a stain they'd scrubbed clean. It wasn't just exclusion. It was erasure. And in that hollow space, betrayal took root. I realized then if they thought silencing me was simple, they hadn't learned a thing about me. Their cruelty had sparked something far stronger than shame. By the time Lily walked down that aisle, they would feel my absence like a shadow. Heavy, inescapable. And my mother, she would regret ever uttering the words. You'd spoil her day. The morning after my mother's betrayal, I couldn't shake the gnawing ache in my chest. My childhood home, the place that should have been my sanctuary, now felt like hostile territory. Every corner whispered of her disapproval, every glance was laced with judgment. Still, I forced myself through the motions of the day. Coffee, work emails, silence. But beneath the surface, fury simmered. They thought they could erase me as if I were a stray mark in their perfect portrait of a family. 2 days later, I overheard my mother on the phone. She stood in the kitchen, voice low but sharp, speaking to my aunt. "Yes, it's all settled. Nora won't be there. Honestly, it's for the best. You know how she is, always drawing attention. Always complicated. Complicated. That word again. I clenched my fists so tightly my nails cut half moons into my palms. My aunt's laughter drifted faintly through the receiver, cruel and dismissive. I wanted to scream, to burst into the kitchen and tear the phone from her hands. But instead, I stood still. Listening, memorizing every syllable. Because if they were determined to cut me out, I would make certain that their decision carried consequences. Later that night, I sat at my desk with my laptop glowing in the dark. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as thoughts spun like wildfire. Memories of Lily flooded back. The secrets we once shared, the mistakes she had hidden from the world, the fragile image she now paraded as perfect. I knew things. Dangerous things. And as the wedding approached, my rage crystallized into something sharper: resolve. They wanted a day free of me. Then I would give them a day they would never forget. Not because of my absence, but because of what I would reveal. When I finally closed the laptop, the plan had begun to take shape. A revenge both elegant and devastating. I whispered into the silence of my room, my voice steady and unflinching. Let her wear white. Let her smile for the cameras. But by the end of the night, her fairy tale will be nothing but ashes. I became a quiet storm. Over the next week I moved like someone who had learned to hide grief behind a practiced calm. By day I replied to emails, met my deadlines, kept my face composed when relatives asked polite, pitying questions. By night I stitched together a web, not to ensnare, but to expose. They had tried to erase me. I would not allow their version of the truth to stand. First I called old friends of Lily's. There were people she trusted once, girls who had shared late night secrets in college apartments. I listened more than I spoke, and watched the names fall into place: a drunken confession at a party, a bad loan Lily never mentioned to family, photos that suggested a life far from the spotless image she polished for Instagram. One friend granted me something even more useful: a handful of dated text screenshots, where Lily admitted to falsifying parts of her resume to secure a sponsored job. Another remembered Lily slipping a hollow apology that reeked of calculation. Next, I found the wedding planner. Naomi was the sort who kept receipts and contracts for everything. She liked order, and she hated being lied to. Over coffee, Naomi's guarded posture softened. "You have no idea," she said, tapping the table. "Lily pushed us to cut corners with vendors so she could pocket the discounts. She's textbook about appearances." She handed me a folder: invoices with suspicious line items, deposits redirected to a personal account, a vendor's private message saying Lily promised them future contracts in exchange for under-the-table favors. Proof tidy and damning. I photographed receipts, saved files, recorded small, seemingly innocent conversations where my mother's voice quivered with pride, and then joined the chorus of exclusion. Each piece of evidence was a stone I set into place. But I didn't want to be merely a carrier of gossip. I wanted the truth, clean and undeniable. So I hired a discreet private investigator, not for revenge's sake, but for verification. It felt strange to do business of that sort, like stepping into unfamiliar shoes. Still, the investigator returned with corroboration: Lily's side business laundering small payments through an LLC registered under an alias, delivery records that contradicted her off-pocket stories, and a copy of an email where she boasted to a vendor about how easy it was to bend the family into giving what she wanted. All of it was sordid, and all of it felt painful to hold. I found myself pausing in my kitchen at night, staring at Samuel's framed smile on the mantel, wondering how much of his life Lily had touched without him noticing. The ache didn't soften my resolve, it sharpened it. I wanted to be fair, to reveal facts that mattered, not petty slanders. But fairness didn't mean mercy for pretense. I also prepared for scale. If I planned to unmask Lily at the wedding, the moment had to be surgical. Too public, and people would murmur and then forget. Too private, and she could spin it into a family squabble. I needed witnesses, documents, undeniable threads that connected the lies to the bride's carefully curated life. So I called my oldest ally Mara, a cousin who still loved truth more than appearances. Mara agreed to help, and together we drafted a concise packet. Copies of invoices, screenshots with timestamps, the vendor's sworn statement, Naomi's receipts, the investigator's summary. We printed extras and organized them in neat folders, each labeled with a short, factual heading. No melodrama, no hearsay, just evidence. There was one last thing I did that kept me awake more nights than any file: I rehearsed my restraint. Revenge for me was not the spectacle of humiliation. It was the delivery of truth with dignity. I wanted Lily's performance to unravel, because the facts could not withstand her lies, not because I relished her pain. When I tucked the folders into my bag and closed the zipper, my hands shook. Not with fear, but with the sour anticipation of a storm about to break. The wedding was 3 days away. They thought they had a perfect day, free of complications. They thought they had erased me. And while they prepared white napkins and bridal bouquets, I prepared a light none of them could ignore. The morning of the wedding arrived like a glossy photograph. Sunlight lacquered the driveway, white ribbons fluttered on every lamppost, and the air smelled of lilies and expensive perfume. Guests drifted into the garden in pale silks and navy suits, laughing as if the world were simple and kindly. I took a slow breath, and let them think it had been that way all along. I wore a dress that said nothing dramatic. Charcoal, well, unremarkable. It was important I not be noticed until the moment needed me. Mara met me at the gate with a look that mixed guilt and steel. She handed me a discreet folder and a small card with the time and place where the vendors would be seated. Naomi sat under the arbor, pretending to fuss with centerpieces, while watching the guests like a hawk. She would be ready to corroborate anything that needed immediate verification. Inside my bag were the pieces I'd assembled. Printed invoices with highlighted discrepancies. The investigator's report bound with a notarized witness statement from the vendor. A USB with recorded messages. And a second copy tucked just in case. I felt absurdly nervous. Not because I feared discovery beforehand, but because I feared that after everything, my voice would not carry the simple force of truth. The ceremony unfurled in a swirl of vows and rose petals. Lily walked down the aisle looking every inch the practiced bride. Smile perfect, eyes composed. My mother sat toward the front, pearls in place, the picture of propriety. She had that expression people put on when they expect applause. I waited until the champagne and toast, when everyone's attention turned inward. Guests raised glasses, speeches fluttered like confident birds. Lily's father gave a speech about love and trust. My mother laughed at the right moments, the sound thin as glass. Then Mara touched my arm. "Now," she murmured. I stood and moved through the crowd as if I were only stretching. People made room without thinking. At a wedding, elders cross paths with strangers and assume nothing will break. I asked for the microphone with a voice that did not tremble. The giggling hush dropped instantly. A dozen surprised faces rotated toward me. "I don't want to spoil the celebration," I said, and the irony of the sentence landed with a soft, exact weight. "But there are facts that need to be said. Not as vengeance, but so no one is missiled by a smile." Lily's smile flickered. My mother's hand clutched her napkin. A ripple of uncomfortable curiosity spread like spilled wine. I laid the first folder on the small table beside the band, and did something I had rehearsed only once. I spoke plainly. With the rhythm of someone who has lived with grief, and learned how to turn it into steadiness. "Naomi, the wedding planner, will confirm these invoices," I said. "They show payments redirected to an account in Lily's name, not to the vendors. I have messages where Lily promised discounts to vendors in exchange for personal kickbacks. I have records showing items billed to the family, but paid from another source. I'm not accusing anyone of breaking the law here. I am handing you the receipts." Naomi stood and, with a professional's reluctance, affirmed the documents. The vendor whose sworn statement I'd included rose too. He recited, voice shaking, details of phone conversations where Lily had asked him to reroute payments and to lie about deliveries. A murmur dissolved into a low hum. Lily's eyes widened, her composure thinned like paper left in rain. She turned toward my mother, hunting for that readitude of support. Instead, my mother's face shifted surprise, then annoyance, then the cold, blank look of someone whose convenience has been compromised. "Show them everything," I said, and Mara handed USBs to 3 people. Naomi, the vendor, and the head usher, who played a recorded exchange where Lily casually explained how simple it was to manage family pressure and keep the extras for herself. Her voice on the clip was crisp, unguarded, and unmistakably hers. Silence, more loaded than any shouting. The band stopped mid-note, as if the music itself had been arrested. At first there was whispering, embarrassed and scattered. Then people leaned forward, faces shifting from celebratory to incredulous. A cousin I'd always thought lukewarm marched to the front and demanded to see the spreadsheets. My mother's expression hardened into a feral something. Anger, shame, disbelief. It was hard to tell which burned brighter. Lily tried to interject. Her words were thin. "It's a misunderstanding." She faltered as the vendor repeated details that only someone in the scheme would know. Faces turned away from her, toward the documents she had never planned on seeing in daylight. One by one, witnesses confirmed the inconsistencies. Contracts, once hidden behind glossy drafting, were now plain for anyone to read. My mother trembled. She had been the loudest in insisting I be excluded, and now, under the sun, the committee she trusted to keep up appearances watched her complicity be revealed in quiet, incontrovertible ways. Sophia's voice, which I'd heard earlier in the wedding story I'd exposed, emerges. "No, different names. Keep focus." The fallout was immediate. A few guests stood and walked out, not in drama but in a dignified retreat. Others whispered into phones. Lily's smile dissolved into a face streaked with mascara. Not the controlled, staged tears one practices, but the honest shredding of a performance. My mother tried to speak, to clasp my hand for comfort. An awkward apology that read more like damage control than sorrow. I could have thundered at her, called her every name, broken the space between us in a public collapse. Instead, I folded my hands and said, quietly, I did not come here to humiliate anyone. I came because truth matters. We are family, and we owe each other honesty more than we owe appearances. My voice steadied the room as much as the papers did. The guests looked at me differently now. Some with pity, some with anger, others with the slow, dawning respect reserved for people who refuse to accept comfortable lies. Lily's father approached us, his face creased. He had always been a man who valued reputation. Yet as he scanned the documents he could not deny the thread. He sat with me for a long time after the chaos, apologizing in the small, sincere way of people who finally see what they missed. By sunset the wedding had folded into something quieter, edges softened by truth and a rearrangement of alliances. Some guests stayed, for reasons of compassion or curiosity. Some left, not wanting to be yoked to scandal. When the last bouquet was tossed and the music went thin, my mother found the courage, or the compulsion, to approach. Her eyes were wet. She touched my arm as if testing whether I was still present. You were right, she said, voice small. I didn't want to believe it. I'm sorry I pushed you away. I looked at her, saw the flicker of regret, and felt something complicated: relief, sorrow, a sadness for what we'd lost between us. I did not come to be forgiven. I told her. I came to be seen. She nodded. And for the first time in years we were not simply actors in the family's approved scene. We were people, raw and accountable. Outside, the night air smelled of cut grass and faint smoke from a distant grill. I walked away from the garden, holding the folder close like an old talisman. The plan had worked. But more importantly, the truth had been set free in the place it would cut deepest, among people who had counted on illusions. I did not gloat. There would be consequences. Apologies to accept or refuse. Relationships to mend or to leave. But I had reclaimed my place within the story. The wedding would not be the seamless triumph they had imagined. It would be the turning point that rearranged loyalties. As I stepped into the quiet street, my phone buzzed with a single message from Lily: "We need to talk." I read it and placed the phone face down. For the first time in weeks, my chest felt clear, as if something heavy had been lifted. The future, once a gloomy horizon, looked like an open road. In the days that followed, the wedding was all anyone in our family circles could talk about. What should have been remembered for music and flowers became infamous for exposed ledgers, recorded calls, and a bride's undoing in front of her own guests. My phone rang endlessly. Some people wanting details, others quietly thanking me for saying aloud what they had suspected but feared to voice. Lily vanished from the social gatherings almost immediately. She and her family issued a brittle statement about misunderstandings and regrettable miscommunication with vendors. But no one bought it. When people replayed the recording I'd shared, her voice was unmistakable. What she called miscommunication, the rest of us knew as calculated greed. My mother tried to contain the scandal with her usual tactics: silence, stern looks, carefully worded dismissals. But the shine was gone. Those who once admired her composure now saw the shadows of complicity. She had chosen to side with Lily, to shut me out under the pretense of keeping peace. And now that peace was rubble at her feet. For weeks, she avoided me. When she finally came to my house, without pearls, without polished words, she looked older than I had ever seen her. She sat at my kitchen table, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles turned white. "I was cruel," she said softly. "I thought you were jealous." Bitter, I didn't want to see the truth, because it would have shattered the picture I wanted to show the world. "And so I chose her over you. I will regret it for the rest of my life." Her apology did not erase the years of dismissal, but it carried a weight that felt real. I listened, not rushing to comfort her. When she finished, I said only, All I ever wanted was to be believed. Something in her eyes cracked then, a tenderness that might have been hidden for years. She reached for my hand, and for once, I didn't pull away. Forgiveness is not a switch, it's a process. But in that moment, I felt the faint beginning of it. As for Lily, the consequences came swift. Vendors filed complaints. Contracts were rescinded. Her reputation, once polished like glass, now looked like shattered shards across the floor. The marriage itself strained under the weight of lies. Whispers said her husband was reconsidering vows uttered under false pretenses. I did not need to lift another finger. Revenge had never truly been my goal, justice had. And justice, once loosed, had a way of finding its mark. Months later, when a smaller family gathering was held, I was invited without hesitation. No one dared exclude me again. Not because I had forced my way back in, but because truth had forced them to reckon with what they had done. That night, as laughter circled the table and glasses clinked in cautious hope, I sat quietly, feeling a peace I had not known in years. The shame of exclusion no longer lived inside me. It had been returned to those who tried to bury me with it. I looked at my mother across the table. She met my gaze, and for the first time in decades, it was not cold or critical. It was steady, perhaps even proud. The revenge, I realized, was never the documents or the public revelation. It was this reclaiming my place, not through their mercy but through my own courage, and in that reclaimed place, I finally felt free.